Welcome to the Plant Spirit Podcast on connecting with plant consciousness and the healing wisdom of nature. I'm your host, Sarah Artemisia, and I am absolutely delighted to introduce our next guest to the show today. Danielle Williams is a flower essence co-creator and founder of Vibrational Medicine. She works in conjunction with elemental herbalism, women's health, and energy healing in co-creation with the plant cesters and flower essences to support people with healing the body, spirit, and mind. In this episode, Danielle shares about her experience of working with flower essences and how to deepen in relationship with the plants and flowers. So Danielle, I am so delighted that you were able to join us today for our interview.
Hi, thank you. I'm honored to be here with you, speaking about the plants.
I just absolutely love your connection, particularly with the flower realm. And I know that you work really closely with the flower essences. And so I actually wanted to start out by sharing an excerpt of something that you recently wrote that really resonated with me. Would that be all right if I shared that?
Perfect. Yes.
Okay, wonderful. So this is something that Danielle recently wrote that just really resonated with me. She asked this question of, what is your essence? If you were to sit in a beautiful crystal clear spring, what vibrations would the water be infused with energetically? What etheric qualities do you have that may need to be amplified? There is always one more layer to uncover, like ancient stone passed over by flora, fauna, bones, memories, the sun and moon, tides, sand, mass events, and stardust. Much like us, we are as vast as the cosmos, nothing less. So thank you so much for writing that. That really resonated with me, particularly this that very first question about what is your essence, and really, if we each were to sit in a crystal clear spring of water, what is the vibration that we would be emanating? And immediately, of course, I thought of flower essences. And so I'm curious, in your experience, how is the human experience vibrationally like a flower essence?
Well, I thought it was so interesting because one day I was taking a bath, and I always love making baths extra, with the flowers, the salt. And I was sitting there and I was thinking, okay, there's a flower in this water with me, but I'm taking up more space in this water. So is my essence overpowering to the flower? Am I co-creating with this flower? It was just a super interesting kind of visionary state that I went into, thinking, okay, I'm sitting in this spring, and what is sort of flowing out of me? And I'm a really thought-based person. 90% of the things that, I talk or I think about don't even exit me in what way whatsoever. So I just thought it was really cool to think about how we're co-creating with the environment. And that's why I wrote a co-creator of flower essences, because I wanted to make sure that everyone knew that I was co-creating with the flowers. Without them, we wouldn't even have these to work with and to create things with. And they're helping us create things in our body that, we couldn't think of otherwise. So, back to the spring thing, I just thought it was so beautiful to think about how I was affecting my environment, whether it was good, bad, and different.
I love that. Yeah. And particularly how I've always been really interested and intrigued by this dynamic interplay of how we impact our environment and our environment impacts us, or how we affect the environment and the environment affects us. And I really feel that so clearly in such a subtle way with flower essences. And I'm curious if you could share a bit about your experience of working with flower essences as a healing modality.
So I started working with flower essences because, I had done the talk therapy, every single physical thing you could think of, Reiki, everything. I tried the crystals, all of it. And I loved it, but for some reason, something else was calling. And so I started using tinctures. And I was like, what? Because oftentimes in the West, I feel like we're kind of like, okay, what's the biggest thing we can use to just like knock this out? I don't want to handle it. I don't want to deal with it. And flower essences kind of came up when I was like, I don't want to use tinctures. I don't want to use these big, I don't want to use Western medicine or, all that, everything that goes in that realm. So I went to the bottom, which is what I love to do. And flower essences are essentially vibrationally at the most, etheric, pure place that you can be. I mean, there's no like taking it and, you get this big, huge thing. And for, any illness that I've had or experienced, I mean, I always love to go to the bottom of it. And anyone, if anyone's like, okay, well, I have, digestive issues, I'm like, well, there's something that's emotional and they're like, no, there's not. It's just that my stomach hurts. And I'm, so flower essences are in tune with me because I'm like, what's the emotional bit of this? So I love using that as a base for the healing modality because it helps you get clear to the bottom. And one thing I heard, I wish I could remember where it was. It was such a long time ago. But someone said that water can cut through anything eventually. And that is the vehicle that flower essences go through. And so they're eventually going to get clear to the bottom of the thing, which I love. And that's why I like to use them in my healing work.
That's amazing. I know, before getting on this interview, we were talking about our mutual love for deep transformational healing, which is certainly up in the collective right now. And I'm curious if you could also share a little bit about your experience in how flower essences in particular can be helpful for supporting empathic and sensitive folks, particularly with everything going on right now.
Sure. And I think that's a really important thing to be talking about, that not everyone is. And I adore that's a conversation that's happening. But for sensitive folks, which I am one of them, I realized that I would walk into a room and start feeling completely differently than I did before. And I never, before I figured it out, I never thought it was the fact that I couldn't uphold a boundary because I was so sensitive in who I was as a person. I mean, I felt like I was just sort of a ghost, like inhaling everyone else's stuff. And I feel like that's very true for healers, in that realm, because people can tell when you want to help them and when you have that vibrational essence about you. So it's interesting because, for empaths and sensitive folks who have all these amazing gifts that they might not even know that they have, flower essences are like the most amazing thing I've found to help me with bringing those gifts out. And I mean, there's a flower essence for whatever, the human condition. I mean, flowers they want to help us. I mean, I've heard them say, we are here to help you. And here in my home state of Colorado, I was making an alpine violet flower essence, and that was like empath medicine. That's what that is. And for some reason, it was a combination of the color purple and just what they were telling me, because I think empaths are very third eye oriented. It's hard for them to come down into their bodies. So I noticed that when I was making this essence, I was sitting there with the violets, and it's funny because how, in the doctrine of signatures, how they look, they're in these little groups, and they're kind of like, they grow next to things, of course, but they're very consistent in this group like quality that they have. And the stem that they grow on is a little taller than the leaves. And it's almost like their little flower faces are talking to each other. Like they have their own little cute, like, coven thing going on. And I'm like, oh my God, that, empaths need that. And so I started taking, this Alpine Violet flower essence, and my people just started kind of, it was like a glance. And empaths are, I feel like, we look at each other and we're too afraid to say anything, but it's like you get that look and you're like, oh, yep, they're in my little violet group, so it helps you kind of get. And for empaths, I feel like, a lot of people around me would say, well, stop being so shy, stop being so this, you're too sensitive. But those are our gifts that we need to realize that we have. And, these flower essences, there's so many that we can use, like for boundaries, for, speaking your truth, and so many other things that are just magical, and they're sensitive like empaths are. It's not like this, this pill that you're taking or a tincture that like makes your jaw hurt because it's so strong, I think that flower essences truly are empath medicine because they're so energetically calm, really.
Totally.
So it's not going to work up our nervous system anymore to take them.
Yeah, I totally feel that they're so subtly energetically oriented that folks who are really empathic, it just works with our systems really, really well. I'm curious. So you brought up a couple things there I wanted to circle back to. One is that there are certain essences that you've worked with that are really helpful for boundaries. What is one that you've absolutely loved working with that can be supportive for creating those clear energetic boundaries?
Sure. So, milk thistle is my favorite because, again, it's purple, which is interesting. And it's got all the spines on it, but it's got the flower is so soft and so gentle, but the rest of the plant is like, I do not want to be walking into that, and that's one of my favorite ones for empaths because and I also feel like it's got a certain, like, I feel like it has a Mars type quality, but like a feminine Mars type quality, like like the Kali goddess, maybe, that is very protective, and she will tell you, like, do not go in there. And I started realizing when I took milk thistle too, and some of my clients that took it, they're like, I do not do anything that makes me feel unsafe anymore. I'm able to step back, and it's like a very clear no. We're saying no to this person. And for empaths, that's a big thing, is saying yes when we mean no. So I love that essence for that reason.
That is huge. That's huge. And then what about, and really linked to that, is that piece that you mentioned earlier about speaking your truth. What essences, or what's like a big one that you've worked with that can be supportive for that?
One of my favorite ones for, speaking the truth would probably be, I have a French rose essence that would be good for that, because roses, again, have the thorns, but roses, I mean, just the scent of them brings you to another place. And so you can feel relaxed enough when you're taking French rose to just kind of spit it out instead of like overthinking, like, oh, if I say this, they're going to think this. Like, French rose really helps us to just say it instead of wondering what the other person is saying, or going to reply, rather. Because what people are going to reply is really, it's not up to us to decide. It's, we can respond, but it's not our job to put energy into deciding how we're going to feel about what they're going to say. So it's like, yeah, French rose is such a good one for that. And again, it's got that mother-like energy too.
Totally. I love working with rose, and definitely this past year have been diving more into the nuances of the different varieties of rose, like a cultivated French, like Cecil Bruner, who's very pink, has such a different energetic quality to me than, say, wild rose. Like, it's so interesting to me how even within one plant that there can be so many different nuances. I mean, it's like developing a relationship with a person. It's like,
Well, for sure. And that's why I like flower essences too, because there's so much. For me, I'm like, I would much rather be talking to the flowers because they're so pure and they just tell you what it is. There's almost like no emotion to it. They're just like, this is what it is, and here you go. You decide whatever you want to do with it. And I love that you brought up wild rose because that one would be, I think, great to work with after working with French rose, when you kind of found your wildness again and you're getting a little braver as an empath. I think that would be great to work with after.
amazing. Amazing. What about right now? Like, what are maybe one or two flower essences that you're working with right now that you absolutely love, and why do you love them?
So right now I'm actually working with sunflower essence is my first one. And it's funny because I never really connected with sunflowers when I was younger. I'm not sure why, but I just but then, one day I was like, I'm feeling called to work with this bright yellow fiery energy. And it was interesting because sunflower helped me. And it's funny, again, in the doctrine of signatures, if you're familiar with that, you'll be like, yes, obviously, but it forces you to face your true north. I mean, the sunflower goes where it's supposed to be going. When the sun comes up, it follows it. It follows that energy. And maybe it's because I've never been, maybe it's because I was shy or something that I never connected with a sunflower in that way. And sometimes that's why we don't connect with certain flowers. It's because it's not integrated yet. We're not ready to integrate that yet. And so sunflower is amazing because it's like, what do you want to do? Okay, well then do it. And as an empath, again, that's really hard. But sunflower has been so gentle and so beautiful in helping me face my true north, where I truly want to go. It helped me move clear across the country from Florida back to Colorado. And so that was amazing. And then, since we're in Scorpio season right now, I'm working with an Amanita muscaria mushroom essence. And that has been like, I've never been attracted to shadow work before because it's scary and you're like, no way, I don't want to dive into that. But Amanita is like a wise elder who is guiding you through, these deep caverns of yourself. And it's been amazing because there's a different quality to mushroom essences too. It's like very much otherworldly, and flower essences are otherworldly, but the mushroom essences, you almost feel like they have an intelligence that wants to work with you. So that's been helping me tap into the intelligence that I was trying to hide for so long. These things that I didn't want to bring up into the light and integrate them because I was afraid of what people would think or how they would react. So the combination of the Amanita muscaria and sunflower has been so amazing for coming back home to the self, especially in the deep dark of the Scorpio season, and we're going into winter. So I'll be working with those for a while too, I think.
That's amazing. Yeah, it's interesting. It actually came up recently for me during an Akashic Records reading. Actually, I was working with a client who is her body is physically allergic to fungus, but the mushroom essences wanted to work with her, not even for her to even ingest them, but for her to just hold the essence in her hand and meditate with it, with the mushroom. And these were even with like, chaga and reishi and lion's mane, like any kind of mushroom essence. But it is really interesting to me, the mushroom essences, how different their foundational medicinal quality on the essence level to me feels so much more about this transmutation of energy, this like digesting of the old crap that no longer serves. Whereas with the plants, it feels to me like they are so connected to the angelic realms of really just transmitting the light. Both are important in the human experience. Like, we got to digest that old crap that no longer serves, that we may have been carrying around for a very, very long time. And it's also very important to step into the truth of who we are. Like you're saying with the sunflower, which I absolutely love working with sunflower essence. It's like, yeah, the sunflowers, they are heliotropic. They are facing towards the sun throughout the entire day. They grow in disturbed soils. This huge invitation of like, love where you are. I mean, my sense with sunflower has always been that they are a very culturally underappreciated flower because of that, like actually they are one of the most phenomenal flowers ever, like ever anywhere. But because they grow, on roadsides next to highways, people are like, oh, it's just a sunflower. But in fact, I truly feel with the sunflower that that flower really helps us with getting super aligned with our vertical central channel of light. And like you said, like facing towards our true north of like, what is it that like standing really tall in our purpose, really tall in who we truly are, and beaming that out and recognizing like, that there is something so extraordinary in the ordinary. Like I feel that so strongly with sunflower medicine, and it's definitely one of my favorite flowers to work with. So I love that you brought that flower up. So, yeah. So tell us a bit about if someone wanted to get started, like maybe, folks out there who are listening who have never worked with flower essences, what would you recommend for someone who wanted to get started working with them?
So I would recommend like, just walking outside your front door and seeing what's growing there, because throughout the ages, there's been this sort of like folk witch type of thing that says whatever is growing out your front door, pay attention to it because it's probably medicinal for you, So, and it was funny, with the sunflower thing, how I was just like, I totally took them for granted because where I live in Colorado, I mean, it's just sunflowers clear down the road. That's it. And I'm like, like you said, it's just a sunflower. But when I started working with it again, I started getting all these like, crazy visions. And you can get that just from sitting with a plant. And I know it feels weird at first. I've done it in public places and it's like people are looking at you like, what are you doing? That's one of those types of medicines you can work for. Being an empath or a sensitive person is sitting in the park. People are watching you and just sitting next to the plant that you're attracted to, like butterflies, moths, they're attracted to plants. Be attracted to the plant that you're looking at. If there's been a flower that you have been drawing, taking pictures of, any of that, you can start there. You don't even have to ingest them to feel their medicine, and ask them, hey, can I sit and chat with you? And I've even heard like, yes, but you have to give us one of your hairs. That's what Thistle told me. Like so sometimes they will ask for offerings. And I was living next to a passion flower vine and it was dying. And it's like, I took offerings to it every day. And she was like, no, I'm done. I've done with this earth. I don't want to, so it's just working with the plants in a reciprocal relationship, just like, how is your energy, how is your essence affecting this plant, and how is it affecting you? Just, pretending like it's an old friend, because truly they are. We've been around plants and co-created with them since the beginning of time that we've been here. And if you truly want to get into, you can make flower essences easily. I mean, just get a glass bowl and ask the plant if it's okay. And if it is, ask how many blooms you can take to cover the surface of the water. And just let it sit in the sun with the flowers face down in the water for a couple hours until you feel like it's ready. And just put it in a bottle, and you can do like half brandy, half of the essence water. And I noticed that a lot of essence water has been thrown away, but seriously, you can keep it and drink it, or you can put it in your bath or whatever. But really, if you want to begin, I would say just start talking to the flowers. It's free, but you get so much out of it. And it's such a beautiful relationship to have, because you'll be walking down the street and a flower will say something to you. I think everyone has this ability to speak with the plants. You just have to want to do it. So it's the intention is all you really need to be there, and devotion to it, really.
Totally. Yeah, I completely agree with that. And particularly, back in the day, all of our ancestors were plant people, I feel like you go back far enough in any lineage and your ancestors were probably plant people, like probably communicating with the plants on a daily basis. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I completely agree with that. I know that you are so deeply connected with the plants and the flowers. And I'm curious, how would you say that the plant spirits support you in your life's work?
Honestly, they're my biggest support. Like, if someone was like, okay, you have to be completely in your room alone by yourself with a plant right out your window, I'd be like, okay, you know, because they don't judge you. They're not, and that's how they support me, is because it doesn't matter how crazy of an idea I have. They, there is some support just from their presence. And just having that support and being able to, show people through what I'm doing, making flower essences and things like that, they're like, we have so much more support. And sensitive people, again, because, sensitive people have more dark nights of the soul than I feel like one person has in their whole entire lifetime. They'll have that many in a month. You know what I mean? So, always, like, if you're feeling alone or down or depressed, just, the flowers are always there, the plants are always there. And even if it's winter, you can speak to the roots, you can speak to the trees. They will still, just because they're not flourishing, appearing to flourish, doesn't mean that they're not there. Just like sometimes we're the same way. If we're having a hard time, we're still there, but we're just not in our growth stage yet. So sometimes, for sensitive people, I like to tell them that you're in a separate growing stage than everyone around you, and that's okay. Like, you're in the dirt still, and that's okay. Like, relax into it. And that's what the flowers invite us to do, the plants and everything. So,
Yeah, I love that. And what you were sharing about with Violet earlier, it reminded me of your name of the flower coven. I'm curious,
yeah.
tell us a bit about what inspired that name. Like, what does flower coven mean to you? I absolutely love what the images that conjures up.
So I was meditating with a hellebore flower essence, and I got this vision, and it was funny because it wasn't hellebores, it was belladonna. I was sitting there in a circle with belladonna, and they were growing out my spine because I had a spinal thing going on. And they were all dancing like these cute witches would in the woods during a ceremony. And I was like, oh my God, it's a flower coven. And that made me feel so good because I don't, sometimes sometimes, all the time, I'm connecting more with the plants than I am with people. So I was like, nope, I want to be in a flower coven. That's where I want to be. So that's where it came from. And it was really fun. It was hellebore is a fun flower essence to take. She's very serious, but she will also sort of laugh at you and show you things that you thought of, and she's like, I told you to do that and you didn't listen, so we're doing this again. you know but
Yeah, she definitely feels like a karmic cleanser to me when I've worked with Hellebore.
yes.
That's what I feel with her pretty strongly.
Yep.
Um, yeah, and since you brought it up, I do want to just touch in on as well. I mean, the fact that Belladonna came to you in that meditation, that's so powerful. Coming up in a couple of weeks, we also have an interview with a couple of fantastic ladies from England, the Seed Sisters, who are also very, very deeply connected with the tradition, what is traditionally known as the witching herbs.
Mm.
And I'm curious if you could share a little bit about your experience with that, and particularly like if you have any recommendations for how to approach those kinds of plants, like the belladonnas, like the angel trumpet, things like that. How to approach those kinds of plants in a respectful way.
Sure. So, hellebore, belladonna, henbane, angel's trumpet, datura, all of these, monkshood, all of these poisonous plants, I truly think that they are here to, they're here to teach us respect and devotion to what we're doing. And that's the only way that you can approach these plants. For the longest time, I wanted to work with them and they're like, nope, not now. You're not, like, you are not even close to doing that now. And when I finally got the call to work with them, I was terrified because, they can literally, they're so poisonous that you will expire if you take these plants, that there's nothing that you can do. And I see some people treating these plants with just they're like, I don't care. I just want to work with these plants, And so approaching these plants with respect, and the reason I wanted to work with them is because my lineage is Scandinavian, Irish, Scottish, Norwegian. So my ancestors were working with and growing these plants, not knowing what they were. And one of my great aunts, she actually, she got bit by a spider in her garden. And I had a vision of her trying to work with these plants. And she got really sick. And so it's an interesting thing because we want to work with these plants that will take us to the underworld. But you have to remember when you're trying to work with these that they literally will. So it's interesting. I'm always a little nervous when people are like, I want to work with that. I want to work with that. You can if you use it in a flower essence made by someone that you trust, because oftentimes these plants aren't even touching the water. You're holding the bowl under the plant, asking for its blessing to be in this essence for you. So yeah, it's an interesting thing. And if you want to work with poisonous plants, I would say go on shamanic drumming journeys with them first. There's shamanic drumming tracks on all the music platforms, and you can listen to a 15-minute journey and just start working with those plants in this way first, and they will tell you. They're very loud in their their abilities to tell you exactly how they want you to work with them and if they want you to. I mean, it took 5 years for me to work with hellebore because she was like, no. So I waited. And sometimes that's what you have to do.
Yeah. Thank you so much for shedding some light on that. That is so true, so powerful. And the plants, they're just like people. It's just like approaching a relationship with a person. Like you wouldn't go like full in, blow into someone's house that you didn't even know and like sit down in their living room and be like, feed me tea or like, give me snacks or like, sure. You would say, hi, like, who are you? And can we get to know each other? So
yeah, it's like working with like the death card, the tower card, and those cards in the tarot, when they show up, you're like, oh man, I don't know if I'm ready. And then you just get through it,
Totally. So good. Well, yeah. Thank you so much for joining us today. I am curious, how can people find you online and find out more about your work?
So I like to keep my website really updated with musings, and that's where you can find my stuff. It's at vibrationalmedicine.love. And my Instagram is @flower.coven. So that's where you can find me.
Wonderful. Well, Danielle, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much. It was wonderful to be here.
And thanks so much for listening and joining us today on the Plant Spirit Podcast. I hope you enjoyed it, and please follow to subscribe, leave a review, and look forward to seeing you on the next episode.